Yahoo News. Trump legal news brief. Supreme Court rejects Jack Smith's request for quick ruling on presidential immunity. Yahoo News. Daily updates on the criminal and civil cases against the 45th president of the United States. It's like a giant soap opera in the news, isn't it? You gotta love it. Let's add to the excitement of days of our lives. The U.S. Supreme Court rejects special counsel Jack Smith's request for fast track, a ruling on whether presidential immunity protects former President Donald Trump from being prosecuted for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, likely delaying the federal trial, one day after Donald Trump's former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, filed for bankruptcy to shield himself from a jury's verdict that he must pay two Georgia election workers $148 million for his false claims about them. Other lawsuits against the former New York mayor continue to push forward. Here's the latest on the legal cases facing those who sought to overturn the election. Read all about it. Yahoo News. There's the article. I'll leave the link in the video description box. Okay. Now, have you noticed how... I've never seen anything like this in the political realms. Granted, I'm not 200 years old, but I have been around a little while. And I've seen some crazy stuff in politics, and it's just getting crazier and crazier and crazier. I used to think it'd be cool to be in politics. Now I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a nasty business. Doesn't matter what side you're on. They're throwing food all over the place. They're just like, food fight. Well, if you're going to do this, then we're going to do that. And it's just like, they're throwing food back and forth. It's like a giant cafeteria, right? It's a giant cafeteria, and they're in these little cliches, and they care more about their parties. They care more about their niches than they do about the nation. They care more about their niches than they do about you. They care more about their niches and their friends and the people that got them there in their position than they care about what they're supposed to do in the first place. It's wild. It's idiocracy on, like, times 10, okay? Do you see it? It's so clear. Do you hear it? Do you feel it? Pretty wild. But let's look at this. Wisconsin Supreme Court rules GOP-drawn state legislative maps are unconstitutional. In its first major decision, the court's new liberal majority ordered lawmakers to draw new maps ahead of the 2024 elections in the battleground state. The Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled Friday that the state's heavily gerrymandered state legislative maps are unconstitutional and ordered lawmakers to draw new maps ahead of the 2024 elections. The case over the Republican-drawn lines, which emerged as a political flashpoint in the closely watched swing state, was the first major one to be heard and decided on by the court's new liberal majority. In a 4-3 ruling along ideological lines, justices tasked lawmakers with drawing new maps, but wrote that if they failed to do so, the court could move forward with a preliminary remedial map drawing process itself. The ideological balance of Wisconsin's high court swung to liberals for the first time in 15 years. In April, Janet Protasiewicz won a seat on the court, being vacated by a retiring conservative justice. During the race, Protasiewicz criticized the state's maps as being unfair and rigged. Comments that conservatives said proved that she'd forecast how she would rule on the issue. Following her victory, Republicans in the state subsequently demanded that she recuse herself from the case, with some threatening to impeach her for refusing to do so. Once again, drama in politics. But it keeps people entertained, it keeps people busy, it keeps people looking at the news. So there you go, folks. There's a little bit of politics for you. I'm neutral. I'm Switzerland. Well, I'm neutral. A truck carrying flammable material. Read all about it. This is not cool. Glenville, New York. A tractor trailer loaded with what authorities believe were gas containers slammed into the bottom of an overhead railroad bridge in upstate New York and exploded Thursday night as a freight train was traveling on the tracks above. Truck carrying gas hits railroad bridge and explodes. WB TV. I'll leave the link in the video description box. Let's just read a quick excerpt. Ooh, wicked. It's the Associated Press. The crash seriously injured the truck driver and briefly knocked out power to local homes and businesses. At about 6:30 p.m., the truck hit the bridge in Glenville, about 30 miles northwest of Albany. Police said the driver apparently failed to heed signs, warnings that the height clearance was 10 feet. Have you ever seen those videos on YouTube where there'll be the sign before the bridge, and then the semi-trucks they'll just pass the sign and slam, and they'll rip the entire roof off the top of the truck? I mean, this guy's fate was even worse. I hope he's okay. I hope he heals up okay, because it sounds like it's pretty bad right now. Video and news photos from the scene showed flames shooting into the sky. The wrecked truck was stuck under the bridge and nearly tipped over. Officials believe it was carrying containers of compressed natural gas. No major damage reported to the train, which didn't stop. The first thought was, God forbid if there's a fatality here. Christopher Kotzel, the Glenville town supervisor, told reporters at the scene, "This is something we feared for years. This is obviously the most significant hit we've had to our bridges. It should invoke more discussion on this, absolutely," he continued. The same bridge was struck by vehicles 5 times earlier this year, the Daily Gazette reported. Multiple homes around the crash site were evacuated as a precaution. Homes and businesses on the east side of town lost power for about 2 hours. Next article. More political charades. CBS News Chicago. Bus carrying more migrants from Texas arrive unannounced in Chicago. They're like, yeah, we're here. Look, I got to say, we're a nation built on immigration. So when I see these articles, I can sense how people react. And it's interesting because I'll bet you most of these people, if not all of them, are hard workers. They're grateful, they're thankful, and they want to provide quality lives for their family and, enjoy life, right? And America is the land of opportunity still. I still believe America is absolutely the land of opportunities. Go Space Force. However, you know what this is going to do, right? They throw out these articles just to cause like this division where people are like, oh no, I can't believe it. And then other people just kind of laugh. But it's political charades. And they've been doing this all over. I mean, this isn't just in Chicago. This has been happening in a multitude of states that I've been reading about. Migrants were seen arriving at an industrial area in the West Loop on Des Plaines and Polk, right off a highway, where they were helped by staff from the Chicago Office of Emergency Management. Migrants said they just arrived from Texas. They were on a bus for 3 days. They hardly made any stops, were barely given any food. They were dropped off at the Greyhound station in West Loop without being given any information. One person was told they could go to the OEMC for help, and the rest followed. They were given blankets and some essentials from the staff before being taken away on the yellow buses. 2 buses carrying migrants have left so far, with another one on standby. OEMC staff have tables set up in preparation for more arrivals. Now, also, I think there was a bunch of people that just arrived from El Salvador or somewhere in South America, I think, in the mountains in Colorado. Colorado Mountain Town says it can't handle 125 arriving migrants. The town of less than 7,000 people doesn't have any homeless services. Now many migrants are forced to sleep outside in the middle of winter. That's rough. That's rough. And it's kind of ridiculous. I feel for the people that are going to Colorado from another country. They leave their country because they want to make a better life for their family and provide. And they get dropped off in a mountain town in Colorado that doesn't have services to help them, so they got to sleep outside. That's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I would think that, I'm just thinking out loud here. Some of us still do that. But if you're not playing political charades, do you think that you could actually do something to help these people instead of just using it as a trophy for political positioning and jockeying? I don't know. I mean, just something to think about. But I'm going to look at this in a little bit different mindset and say, hey, let's bring everybody together instead of hating everybody because they're different. Let's embrace their differences. Let's enjoy being different. Why not? It's kind of cool, actually, when you learn people's customs and cultures that aren't what you've been brought up to know. I mean, some of them you're like, I don't want, that's cool. You do. But then others you're like, wow, that's really cool. So I'm just saying, instead of being upset, let's come up with some solutions. I have a dream. Apple reportedly wants to use the news to help train its AI models. The company is reportedly exploring major deals with companies like Condé Nast and NBC News. Apple is talking with some big news publishers about licensing their news archives, using the information to help train its generative AI systems, the New York Times reports. The company is apparently discussing multi-year deals worth at least $50 million, the New York Times says, and has been in touch with publications like Condé Nast, NBC News, and IAC. The response from the publishers seems mixed. Apparently, the publishers might be potentially on the hook for any legal liabilities that could stem from Apple's use of their content. The NYT says, and Apple has apparently been vague about its plans for news and generative AI. However, other news executives were reportedly more positive about the possibility of partnering with Apple. Apple, Condé Nast, NBC News, and IAC didn't immediately report or reply to requests for comment. I find this very interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because I've studied a lot of the ancient Sumerian and ancient cuneiform from Babylon, goes back 3, 4, 5,000 plus years. And a lot of these older tablets describe how the gods made people to do the work for them. And whether or not it's a metaphor or mistranslation or complete story, let's say it's not true at all, and it's just stories, kind of like movies that we watch now, The Avengers as an example. We'll look at that way for a minute. It still parallels exactly what we're doing right now with artificial intelligence and robotics, because we are creating artificial intelligence and robotics and robots and machines to do the work for us. And it's in our everyday lives, but a lot of people don't really understand it, and they fear it. They think all AI is bad, or some people even think AI is evil. Well, first of all, what's your definition of bad and evil? Because just to use your computer and your phone and have GPS, there's artificial intelligence that's integrated with all of that. Now, if you have artificial general intelligence or you have sentient intelligence in the digital realms, that's a completely different story. You have now created, or you now have a new form of sentience, literally a new life form that thinks for itself. Whether or not it's the programming, it doesn't matter, because the programming allows it to think for itself. People are like, well, that's not real. That's just a program. Well, you're full of programs. Your brain is filled with programs that can be changed and refined and added to and deleted from. You're a biological receiver and transmitter. Now, you also have an electrical field, and nobody can really pinpoint where the brain, like where the mind is, right? Well, it's in the brain. Is it? Because there's data that shows that it's not just the brain, that memories can be stored in DNA. Scientists explain why doing your own research leads to believing conspiracies. I tell people all the time, like, do your own research. And so they're like, no, people can't do their own research. They have to research exactly what we tell them to from our official research pages. So we're going to come up with a news article that says, scientists explain why doing your own research leads to believing conspiracies. But we don't even know what a conspiracy is because we're brainwashed to use the terms that pop culture tells us to. It's humorous. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic day. Be excellent to each other, and check back daily for new content, new updates. Here at ESN, we like to be prepared, not scared. We like to do our own research. We think you should do your own research. Although, according to Vice, you might turn into a conspiracy theorist. And have a beautiful day. Be well, hit the bell. Be the change the world needs to see.